that are familiar not so much with Summer's case, but rather Jack and Lily's or anybody else's that's currently watching the channel. And at this point, it's good to reflect and go back and go through what we have collectively come to learn over the past 4 years when it comes to the case of Summer Wells. I wanted to start off with something that's not proven in court, okay? These are allegations of SA, and they are unproven in court, again, to repeat myself, but have been central to the public scrutiny, especially given the intrafamilial nature and parallels to Summer's case. So this is getting into Mary Hartman's accusations. Regarding the timeline of this, the situation allegedly began when Mary was 5. That was around 1978, and continued until she was 12. This was a span of 7 years. Don, her stepbrother, was reportedly a little bit older, to use quotes. The exact age difference is unclear, but he admitted being somewhat older in a 2021 recorded call. Mary had recounted in interviews from the Interview Room, Chris McDonough's channel, and other YouTube videos that Don initiated contact of an sexual nature behind their parents' backs. She reported it to Utah authorities in 2021, triggering an investigation. Now, an update towards this outcome from Utah, the DA's office found her claims accurate and classified her as a victim, but statute of limitations expired, preventing charges. Don denied it, blaming her, as in she initiated it. Stabbed me in the back, he said, and gaslighting investigators in a heated phone call with podcaster Chris McDonough. This is the one where he accused Mary of lying for attention. There's been no conviction in this situation. There's a related incident. In the same time era, in 1978, Don and others allegedly attempted to assault Mary by holding her down and pulling off her clothes. She escaped and hid. Reported this incident to law enforcement at the time. So it had to have been pretty serious if she reported it to law enforcement at the time, and there's a record of it. So getting on to some other allegations, a 12-year-old girl who slept over at the Wells home reported SA by Don. The date is unspecified, but tied it to the 1970s, 1980s. There's 4 additional women who have privately alleged SA by Don, but requested anonymity, and the details have not been made public. And then there's this panty theft, which would be an actual perversion indicator. In one arrest, the exact date is fuzzy, but post-2000, Don was caught stealing the woman's red panties from an apartment for self-gratification. He admitted this to police while hiding in his van with rugs, linked to broader paraphilic behavior and psychological profiles of the case. Oh my God. Oh my God, the panty sniffing man. Oh my God. Think about how weird that is. How creepy it is to have some tweaker break into your apartment only to steal your best red panties. Talk about a total stalker move. That's such a stalker move. Man, that blows my mind. There's an animal cruelty ties. Uncharged allegations include shooting neighborhood dogs with BB guns and tying firecrackers to their tails as a youth, which is a classic MacDonald Triad, red flag for future violence, alongside fire setting like a barn fire, killing all kinds of animals, which Don has done. In a family context, Don's adult son, Donald Wesley Wells Jr., 34, at the time of Summer's disappearance, he's an RSO. He pleaded guilty in Arkansas in 2007 to sexual indecency with a child. Victim was 18 months younger, a girlfriend, which would be statutory in Tennessee. He was in Utah during Summer's disappearance, as per Don. And Don has defended him publicly in that sense, as you would expect. His way of defending it was just rolling right over whatever discrepancy there was. It was ridiculous. It was a fault. He didn't identify really the legal technical meaning of the jargon in that sense. He misrepresented it and minimized it. Now, relevance to Summers' case regarding investigative scrutiny, the TBI and now FBI have searched the Ben Hill Road property multiple times from 2021 to 2024, citing Don's history as a factor in the unusual circumstances. No charges have filed against him in Summers' disappearance, but his record fueled theories of intrafamilial abuse and escalation. Now, DCS removed Summers' three brothers in July 2021 due to home environment concerns, which would be neglect, guns, supervision lapses. This was exacerbated by Don's arrests. Family has fought unsuccessfully for their return, blaming online witch hunts for think about that. They don't even recognize what the concerns are in order to fix them. They just want to pass blame off anything but really recognizing maybe where they made mistakes in all of this. It's all somebody else's fault. Don addressed his past in 2021 interviews, saying that it's in the past and we'll leave it there. He and Candus, who has her own 2003 Wisconsin misdemeanor for domestic abuse, maintained Summer was abducted from the basement. This history paints a picture of chronic instability, but remember, allegations aren't proof, and Don hasn't been charged in Summer's case. Video in the description. But there's a picture of Hunter and Candus having a selfie moment. Looks like while they were swimming. But it's an example about maybe the type of inappropriate relations that Candus was having towards Hunter. I don't think the feelings were mutual in that sense. I think it was one-sided and it was representative more of grooming. And I'm not trying to defend Candus, but, you know, Candus suffers from a lack of self-awareness and the dangers, and she disregards and wants to, bring home and make everybody as comfortable as she can in that situation. She's naive and easily manipulated, I would believe. But with that comes a lot of other things in this circumstance. First of all, think about that day of June 15th. It seems bizarre that only you are taking Summer and separating yourself away from the boys. It just seems so bizarre not to take everybody with you as an outing, like a family. You're together as a family. It's you, the three boys, and Summer. Why did you have the need in the first place to go pick Hunter up? Why did you want to get away on that June 15th day? There's something not right with the boys just being home alone, that CPS and DHS were in their lives. Why would they leave them unsupervised? Like, what, you guys on one hand, meaning Don and Candus, want to complain about the kids never getting away from the TV and watching it nonstop. Well, they have all kinds of things to do around the house, but when you're going out, why wouldn't you use that as a time to bring them with you in that sense? Maybe that's what was happening. We don't know for sure because we can't trust Dawn's word. And there's a big reason to suspect Dawn is lying in all of this and was actually home around 110 Ben Hill far before Summer Wells went missing. And I'm purposefully not mentioning a time because I don't want to set your minds. Could be anywhere between 11 and 3 that I've heard. 11 and 3, and the call to 911 came in around 6:23, 6:28. You guys can straighten me out in the comments section as to which one. I can't remember. I'm going off my memory, which is fuzzy sometimes. I did a quick search on Grok here, and I've got to straighten out as we talk about it because we know more than Grok does. It got because Candus, they both have the same name. It screwed up the AI. Now you guys know why they did it, to add confusion to things in their lives, perhaps. Meaning Candy Hair and Candus Bly. It says here she was born Candice Bly. No, Candy Hair is her mother. And some records from her Wisconsin background, is the mother of missing 5-year-old Summer Wells, who disappeared from the family's rural Tennessee home on June 15th, 2021. So it goes down to say there's one big thing here that we need to talk about that's missing, that's absolutely relevant to the situation. And no matter or not Grok can find any information on it, it doesn't really matter. The daughter has come out. Candice Bly's daughter has come out in that sense. She has one daughter that she had to give up for adoption. She's come out and reunited in a public setting, I believe over Facebook. But there's also this story about the removal of a child because of Candus hitting it in the head with a baseball bat when she was in the throes of her addiction back at that point in time. And that's as far as I know, that's absolutely true. It's sad, but true. Why isn't it included? Could it be because when it happened, maybe she was 17? How old was she when it happened, I wonder? It references it here, but just as a rumor, online rumor. It goes a lot farther than just a rumor. And I thought I'd read this little section on intrafamilial abuse and escalation. An explanation for what the experts mean when they look at the Summer Wells case and immediately say this is a textbook intrafamilial grooming and escalation environment. Textbook familial and grooming escalation environment. What intrafamilial means? The offender is inside the family or household, whether that be the father, mother, step-parent, older sibling, uncle, live-in boyfriend, etc. The child really trusts them. The offender has unlimited legitimate access 24/7. The rest of the family normalizes the offender being alone with the child. Oh, for example, he's just tucking her in. Or he's watching her while I'm at the store. Outsiders rarely suspect because it's a family. And how grooming and escalation actually works inside a family. You see on your screen there's a chart here with the stages. Then over the next column is what the offender does. The next column is what the child experiences. And the next column is why it works in a family. Stage is trust building. The offender gives lots of extra attention and gifts, exchanges some special secrets, play wrestling and back rubs. The child experiences love and that they're special, they're chosen. and the family sees it as normal affection, the next step in the grooming process is boundary erosion. The offender begins their accidental touching, walking in on bathing, shared beds. They do this because of nightmares. They exchange sexual jokes, perhaps. The child experiences confusion, but taught it's normal. And it works because no one else in the house questions it. The next step is desensitization. The offender will gradually proceed with more asexual contact, disguised as play, cuddling, under the guise of teaching, perhaps. The child learns to stay quiet or be blamed in these scenarios. And it works in the family because the offender controls the narrative. You wanted this. She initiated it, right, Don? Now, the next step is isolation and containment. Like that dungeon in the basement. Oh, what the offender does, moves the child to the basement, the back bedroom, camper, shed. Oh, that white shed, etc. Limits friends, locks the doors at night. Wonder if he was doing that sort of behavior with Josie while he was out in Utah, in the RV in the driveway as well, maybe. The child experiences total dependency on the abuser. Things for food, their bathroom needs, affection. And it works in the family because other family members think that she likes her own space in that sense. Finally, and up the ladder a little bit, we get to maintenance through fear. Threats such as, Mom won't believe you, or you'll be taken away, or I'll hurt you, or I'll hurt your brothers. The threats of physical violence. Of course, the victim in this, the child, learns to stay silent, and it works because family dysfunction or rug use often masks the coercion. The next step is the escalation, which is a danger zone. So this abuse becomes more violent, might be filmed, involves others, or the child reaches an age where she will talk. Ages 5 to 9 is peak danger window. Summer was 5. In this circumstance, the child experiences terror. It works in the family because the offender realizes the child is now a witness who can destroy him. The last step is the terminal phase. Homicide, planned or panic to silence the witness, or staged runaway or abduction. The child in this situation simply disappears or is found dead. The offender uses the same access that enabled the abuse to now dispose of the evidence. So it's an interesting chart. That is the 7 steps. The 7 steps of grooming in the process of escalation. Why Summer's basement bedroom screams stage 4 to 6 every SX crimes detective and forensic psychologist. So the feature in the Wells home, a 5-year-old girl sleeping alone in an isolated basement. That would be the containment and soundproofing, classic intrafamilial escalation marker. The feature in the Wells home on the next one is only one adult controls access, which is Dawn. That's total dependency created. There's a history of SA and child SA in the family. Don's documented past and allegations from age 5 victims. So this is proven predator already in the home. Classic intrafamilial escalation marker. Proven predator already in the home. That's how people need to start seeing Don. And Don has his fan club out there. Like, what's that? Is that Daisy who is all up about Don? Mm-hmm. So, there's also the shaved head. Some people like to think that it was done because of lice. I think that's what Candus mentioned. Others buy the bit that she just wants to be like her other brothers. Maybe it's a bit of everything. Maybe, that's how they sold it to Summer. It's very bizarre to just all of a sudden do that to a girl, especially, in my mind. But the shaved head right before the disappearance, the classic intrafamilial escalation marker here would be de-individualization. Could be for the removal of DNA or paraphilic preference. Don. There's also, in the circumstance, the parents rapidly shifting timelines and deflection onto the brothers. The marker here would be protecting the real secret as to what happened in the basement. So the immediate stranger abduction narrative, despite no evidence of a break-in, would mark or signal a pre-planned cover story for when escalation goes terminal here. And I want to skip over briefly for those who don't remember, don't know, Jeannie Wells, Mary Hartman's sister, and Don Wells' other stepsister. It's sometimes called Jeannie. We'll just call her Don's stepsister, excuse me. She's the younger stepsister of Mr. Wells, the father of missing 5-year-old Summer. Disappeared June 15th, 2021 from Rogersville, Tennessee. Jeannie's allegation of childhood SA by Don have been a significant aspect of public discourse around the case. Emerging shortly after Summer's vanishing, like her sister Mary Hartman, who's another stepsister who has made similar claims, Jeannie's story centers on intrafamilial grooming and ABUSE in the late 1970s. During the family's time in Utah, these allegations, while investigated and deemed credible by authorities, did not result in charges due to the expired statutes of limitations. They have fueled speculation about patterns of ABUSE in the Wells family, though no direct link to Summer's disappearance had been proven or charged. Now, on a side note, it tells us that inside Don Wells' old lizard brain there, his sexualized brain, that there is experiences with SA on an individual who's 5 years old. So he has already internalized and sexualized, if you will, a 5-year-old, just like Summer Wells. Jeannie's disclosure, first shared publicly in July 2021 via Facebook posts and interviews. Example, like the one on the Interview Room podcast with Chris McDonough, describe ABUSE starting when she was 5 years old. Another one. She has emphasized that Summer's case has triggered her to come forward after decades of silence, citing fears for the Wells children. As of November 2025, no new legal developments have occurred. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation's TBI recent activity, example from November 13th, 2025, searching Greenville, Tennessee, does not reference her claims. The Hawkins County Sheriff's Office and TBI maintain the family is cooperative with no arrests tied to these allegations. So the timeline of these allegations from Jeannie, her account aligns closely with Mary Hartman's. Both sisters alleged ABUSE by Dawn in the same household, spanning 7 years. Oh my God. The timeline is based on her interviews and Utah DA reviews from 2021. 7 years, guys. Not just a one-off incident, not just something to be confused about. 7 years. These poor young individuals had their futures shaped by a predator. This is the individual that Dawn's talking about with that call to Chris McDonough, talking about how him and her had something going on when they were younger. You had something going on with the 5-year-old, Dawn? You had something going on with a 5-year-old boy? What a pig. Now on your screen, there's a timeline of allegations on this chart. The period from 1976, the initiation. The abuse began with grooming. Dawn allegedly initiates SA, or sexual contact, inappropriate touching, in isolated areas of the family home, behind parents' backs. Jeannie describes it as coercive, with Dawn using his older sibling's role for access. This overlaps with similar claims from Mary and a 12-year-old sleepover guest. Now, Jeannie's age at the time was 5, Dawn's was 12. That's a 7-year age gap. He later claims that they were both kids at that time. So from the time period of 1978 to 1985, there was ongoing ABUSE, with intermittent escalation to more explicit acts over those 7 years. Jeannie alleges victim blaming, as in she initiated it, and threats to ensure silence. Household instability, poverty, moves Dawn's early behavioral issues, like alleged animal cruelty. This enabled secrecy. Jeannie, at that time, this was between the ages of 5 and 12, and Dawn was 12 and 19. Jesus. The time period 1985, the end, abuse ceases as Jeannie enters early teens and family dynamics shift, like Dawn leaving home. She suppresses the trauma due to shame and family pressure, which is common in such cases. This is at a time period when Jeannie was 12 and Dawn was 19. Fast forward to June 2021, Summer's disappearance prompts Jeannie to disclose publicly, fearing a cycle. She posts on Facebook and contacts Utah law enforcement, filing a formal complaint. July 2021, Jeannie details her story in a 45-minute plus the interview room interview, linking it to Summer's vulnerability. For example, isolated basement bedroom. The Utah DA investigates alongside Mary's case, validating her account but citing expired statutes, which are 4 to 10 years, extended for minors but lapsed. Fast forward ahead to 2022, the media and backlash. Allegations gain traction in true crime circles. For example, Reddit's Summer Wells thread. Dawn responds in a recorded call, minimizing it. DCS removes Wells' boys in July of 2021, amid broader scrutiny, but no directly tied to Jeannie. So, ongoing echoes between 2023 and 2025, Jeannie's story resurfaces in discussions. For example, the 2023 Reddit thread questioning her credibility via unrelated personal history. No new probes. DCS dismiss Wells' neglect claims as unsubstantiated. June 2025, unrelated to SA allegations. So Jeannie's narrative, shared in emotional detail during her 2021 podcast appearance, emphasizes the predatory grooming and lifelong impact. The key elements are the nature of the abuse. It began with playful boundary testing that escalated to sexual exploitation. Jeannie recounts Don's manipulation. She says, "He'd blame me, say I started it. I was just a little girl." She describes coercion in the chaotic family home where Don's position allowed unchecked access. Now, it overlaps with Mary's claims. Both sisters allege Don targeted young girls in the household. Jeannie ties it to broader dysfunction, including Don's alleged youth issues like fire setting, animal harm, like the barn fire, and unaliving those animals. Unproven, but it's cited as red flags. The psychological impact. Jeannie has spoken of enduring trauma, including trust issues and triggered resurfacing from Summer's case. Seeing that little girl gone, she said, "It broke me. I couldn't let it happen again." Forensic psychologist Dr. Gary Brucato, or Brusato, I'd say, Brusato, Bruce with an ATO, on the interview room, or Brusato, described it as classic intrafamilial escalation, noting the 7-year age gap and Don's denial as hallmarks of predators. Some corroboration in reference to related accusers that aligns with Mary's 7-year abuse span and 4 anonymous women's claims against Don. Don's son, Donald Jr., is a registered SO, 2007 conviction for child indecency. The Utah DA officially validated this, reviewed alongside Mary's case, confirming accurate cause of action and victim status, but no prosecution due to the time limits. Don has not offered timelines or witnesses. Instead, he minimizes it as mutual kid stuff. Don Wells denies these allegations, calling them lies from family grudges. In a September 2021 recorded call with Chris McDonough, analyzed on the interview room, he gaslighted. It specifically says he gaslighted. Jeannie victimized me my whole life. She wasn't innocent. We were kids. No one could prove anything. He deflected "it don't worry me anymore" and pivoted to religion, as he does. "We all sin." This echoes his response to Mary's claim, including a retaliatory prank call on August 2021, where he and Candus hoaxed Jeannie about his arrest / the Mexican mafia threats, widely seen as intimidation. Utah's statutes expired decades ago. The 2021 probe was symbolic, confirming credibility without action. Jeannie's story amplified intrafamilial abuse theories. For example, Summer's basement bedroom as a grooming environment, contributing to DCS removing the boys in July 2021. This is dismissed as unsubstantiated in June 2025. It factors into Don's person of interest status per media, but TBI focuses on tips. For example, the 2025 Greenville search. Public and media echo active in Reddit and the subreddit Summer Wells since 2021, with threads praising her bravery, but some questioning via unrelated personal details. Jeannie's allegations highlight unresolved family trauma, paralleling Mary's and underscoring doubts in the Wells narrative. They underscore survivor resilience, but face online harassment. For more, let's see, we'll scroll down. Let me do a little bit more searching here, friends. I think this is extremely interesting. We're talking about the MacDonald Triad when it came to Don Wells' early childhood. Let me read you what it came up with, just from what we know that's publicly or freely available regarding Don Wells. And remember, these are the things that we know. Imagine the things that we don't. Or don't, maybe. So the forensic analysis of the MacDonald Triad on Don Wells. The MacDonald Triad, also called the Triad of Sociopathy or Hellman and Blackman Triad, consists of 3 childhood, early adolescent behaviors that were once believed to strongly predict later violent, especially sadistic or asexually violent offending. 1. Fire starting, persistent and non-accidental. 2. Animal cruelty, beyond normal hunting or boys will be boys type things. 3. Bedwetting, past the age of 12. It's less predictive on its own. It's often now dropped. So modern forensic understanding, as of 2020s, the triad is not a diagnostic on its own. Many kids show 1 or 2 and never become violent. When all 3 are present and other risk factors like abuse, head injury, or substance exposure, sexual boundary violations, the predictive power jumps dramatically. The triad is now viewed as a marker of early escalating sadism and impulse control failure. Open that one up in a second. Especially when it combined with paraphilias, asexual deviance, and intrafamilial asexual offending. Don Wells' MacDonald Triad checklist based on public records, family statements, and Utah-era reports. The triad element, fire setting, and the evidence in Don's history, family and community reports from Utah, Arkansas era, a barn on a family property burned down with animals inside when Don was a juvenile, a young man, or a young teen. He was reportedly questioned but never charged. Multiple sources, Mary Hartman, Jeannie, and old neighbors, describe it as deliberate. So the strength of this evidence is strong from multiple independent sources. There's repeated allegations of animal cruelty, like shooting the neighborhood dogs and cats with BB guns, tying firecrackers to dogs' tails and lighting them, he had a general reputation in Utah for torturing animals, corroborated by stepsisters and ex-partners in interviews. Now, this has been strong, consistent across decades and accusers. We don't know too much about or if bedwetting was an issue, so we'll skip past that for now. Don is 2 for 2, possibly 3 for 3 on the triad, by the way, which is extremely rare and statistically alarming. Even to Grok, the AI are alarmed. Now, how the triad interacts with Don's other forensic markers. When you overlay the triad on his documented profile, the risk picture becomes very dark. The additional high-risk factor being childhood, adolescent, X offending. Don Wells' evidence is validated essay of stepsisters starting at victim of age 5, according to the Utah DA's office in 2021. The combined effect, the triad plus the early asexual predation, equals classic asexually sadistic trajectory for Don. The additional high-risk factor for Don over paraphilic behavior. Don Wells has evidence that he was arrested for stealing women's red panties for self-gratification while possessing some nose candy, the rugs, devil's dandruff. The combined effect with the triad plus paraphilia equal escalation pathway seen in many child killers, like Joseph Edward Duncan and Wesley Allen Dodd. Oh my God, that Wesley Allen Dodd is the devil incarnate. I believe Chris McDonough spent a great deal of time on that case, interviewing Dodd. This guy would kidnap kids and SA them and keep them in for a long period of time and strangle them. Oh, Jesus. And he straight up told the court that this is what he wants to do. They're going to have to take his life, because if they ever let him go, he's going to be going out there and immediately doing it again. Reoffending in that sense. Look, he got caught. You can go search. He's up there in the Hall of Fame when it comes to these weirdos. You can search it all over YouTube, and there's stories and direct interviews. The one thing that I'll say with the Wesley Dodd case compared to others is how open Wesley was with all of this. How open he was and honest about his intent and his feelings and his past. So disturbing. So we go on to the additional high risk factor being criminal versatility. Don Wells has a background of rugs, burglary, domestic violence, DUI, weapons violations across multiple states. It shows poor impulse control and disregard for consequences, for sure. Going on to the additional high risk factor being intrafamilial access and isolation tactics. And that was being Summer, his 5-year-old daughter, being kept in an isolated basement bedroom. The combined effect, it's a perfect containment enforcement for the ABUSC and disposal. Everybody around the house wouldn't have think anything of it because of how they have things set up. Summer should have had a bedroom all by herself. Away from the boys, away from parents, away from everybody in the circumstance. And Dawn wants to put all of this back on Summer as like a young child begs to sleep in our bedroom. No, she doesn't. That's something that you normalized with the child, Dawn. You weirdo. The additional high-risk factor is the history of fire and animal unaliving. Don Wells' evidence has with that barn fire with all of the animals inside. It's a direct link between cruelty to living things and fire as a thrill or control mechanism. Just in regard to some statistical and clinical context, in the FBI's 1980s and 1990s serial offender studies, 65% of asexually sadistic unalivers displayed at least 2 triad behaviors, compared to under 5% of the general population. When the triad plus childhood S offending plus the paraphilias are present, the likelihood of later lethal violence against children rises exponentially. See the studies by Ressler, Burgess, and Douglas. Modern meta-analysis from the 2020s have downgraded the triad alone, but when it clusters with the above factors, it remains one of the strongest childhood predictors available. Now, bottom line, from a forensic standpoint, Don Wells exhibits one of the clearest adult presentations of the MacDonald Triad combined with early asexual predation, seen in many resolved child abduction homicide cases. It is the exact profile that makes law enforcement and profilers immediately think intrafamilial escalation to homicide, not a stranger abduction. That's why even 4.5 years later, every seasoned investigator who looks at the full file quietly says the same thing. This is textbook. The danger didn't come from the woods. It was already living in the house. And it had been practicing cruelty since childhood.